Thorin Oakenshield, a name that echoes through the halls of Middle-earth, a king without a kingdom, driven by an unrelenting dream to reclaim his ancestral home. His quest to retake Erebor was noble, but was it destined to fail from the start? Was Thorin's greatest enemy the dragon Smaug, or was it something more subtle, his own pride? Let's look at this today.
Build me an army worthy of Mordor.
Will you have peace or war?
I will have war.
Thorin's quest to reclaim Erebor wasn't born out of greed. It was rooted in something far deeper, a sense of duty, of honour, and the desire to restore the dignity of his people. As the heir of Durin's line, Thorin bore the weight of a grand legacy. His grandfather, King Thror, he had ruled Erebor during a time of immense wealth and prosperity until Smaug descended upon the mountain, scattering the dwarves and leaving them as wanderers. This fall from greatness shaped Thorin's entire life. He grew up in exile, enduring hardship while holding on to the hope of restoring his people's former glory. For Thorin, reclaiming Erebor wasn't just about gold, it was about home, identity, and that honour of Durin's folk. This noble purpose made him a charismatic leader, inspiring loyalty among his company and earning him the support of the likes of Gandalf, and even eventually a reluctant Bilbo Baggins. Tolkien highlights Thorin's sense of responsibility early on, particularly during that meeting at Bag End. Thorin speaks not merely of treasure, but of reclaiming a kingdom lost to a terrible foe. This sets the tone for his quest, a mission driven by pride in his people, but not yet corrupted by personal ambition. Thorin's mission wasn't just personal, it was tied to that legacy of Durin's line, one of the most revered in Dwarven history. Reclaiming Erebor meant more than just regaining a homeland. It symbolised restoring the honour of his forefathers and fulfilling what Thorin saw as his destiny. However, this ancestral pride was truly a double-edged sword. On one hand, it gave Thorin the strength to lead his company through countless dangers, but on the other hand, it made him rigid and often uncompromising. He clung to tradition and mistrusted those outside his kin, which strained his relationship with Bilbo. Despite Bilbo's growing courage and cleverness, Thorin struggled to see him as an equal, a flaw rooted in his pride. This rigidity becomes more apparent as Thorin nears Erebor. The closer he gets to his goal, the more his pride begins to cloud his judgment. The noble leader driven by honour starts showing signs of something darker, an obsession with reclaiming not just his home, but the vast treasure hoarded by Smaug. When Thorin finally reaches Erebor, the quest seems close to success. Smaug is driven out, and the dwarves reclaim their ancestral halls. But this is where Thorin's story takes a darker turn. Central to this shift is the Arkenstone, a great gem that symbolises the heart of the kingdom and Thorin's right to rule. Tolkien describes the Arkenstone as a treasure beyond price, and for Thorin, it becomes an object of fixation. He believes that without it, his kingship is incomplete. This obsession marks the onset of what is often referred to as dragon sickness, a term that has very much been popularised by the films, but hinted at in Tolkien's writings as the corrupting influence of immense wealth. Thorin's desire to possess the Arkenstone blinds him to reason. When Bilbo secretly offers the gem to Bard in hopes of brokering peace, Thorin sees it not as an act of wisdom, but as betrayal. His paranoia deepens, and he becomes isolated from his own company. What began as a noble quest to reclaim a homeland descends into a desperate bid to hoard wealth and power. Yet, Thorin's obsession isn't just about greed, it's tied to his identity. The Arkenstone represents his legitimacy as king. Without it, he feels his rule is hollow, which drives much of the tension leading up to the Battle of Five Armies. Thorin's pride, once a source of strength, becomes that downfall. After reclaiming Erebor, he refuses to share its treasure with Bard and the people of Lake Town, who had greatly suffered from Smaug's attacks. Despite Bard's reasonable request for aid, Thorin's mistrust and possessiveness led him to reject any form of diplomacy. This standoff escalates as Bard and the Elves of Mirkwood lay siege to Erebor. Rather than seeking peace, Thorin calls upon his cousin Dane Ironfoot for reinforcements, preparing for war. His company, once united by friendship and loyalty, begins to fracture under the weight of his stubbornness. Bilbo, in an act of quiet heroism, tries to prevent bloodshed by delivering the Arkenstone to Bard, like we mentioned a moment ago. But Thorin, consumed by pride and paranoia, just cannot see beyond his own desire to possess it. He accuses Bilbo of treachery and banishes him from the mountain. However, Thorin's story doesn't end in pride. During the climactic Battle of Five Armies, he breaks free of his obsession. Leading a charge down the mountain, he fights bravely alongside his king. But this final act of courage comes at a great cost. Thorin is mortally wounded. No, not by Azog in the actual writings, that was a movie-only thing, but still, the wounds are deadly. On his deathbed, Thorin reflects on his actions and offers a heartfelt apology to Bilbo. In this moment, Thorin finds redemption. Though his pride led him astray, he ultimately recognizes the true values of friendship and peace. Looking back at Thorin's story, it's tempting to conclude that his quest was doomed by pride from the very beginning. After all, his pride drove both his greatest successes and his ultimate failure. But was it truly the cause of his downfall, or was Thorin fighting against forces beyond his control? On one hand, Thorin's determination to reclaim Erebor was necessary. Without his leadership, the dwarves would have remained scattered, and Smaug might have continued to threaten the Free Peoples. His bravery inspired those around him and set in motion events that would ultimately benefit Middle-earth. On the other hand, Thorin's inability to overcome his pride nearly led to disaster. His refusal to compromise and his obsession with the Arkenstone alienated his allies and brought him to the brink of ruin. While he found redemption in the end, it came too late to prevent the losses of the lives of Fili and Kili, and in the end, his own life as well. Ultimately, Thorin's quest wasn't doomed by fate, it was shaped by choices. His story serves as a cautionary tale, reminding us that even the noblest of missions can be undone by personal flaws. Yet, it also shows us that redemption is always possible, even in the face of great failure. And so, there you have it. Was Thorin Oakenshield's quest doomed by pride? Not entirely. His journey was one of noble purpose, but it was hindered by personal flaws. In the end, Thorin found redemption, proving that even in tragedy, there is room for growth and wisdom. Thorin's story remains one of the most compelling in Tolkien's legendarium. After all, The Hobbit is what kicked everything off for us as readers. It's truly that tale of courage, pride, failure, but ultimately, hope. But now it is your turn. Was Thorin Oakenshield doomed by his pride, or was he a hero whose flaws made his story all the more real and powerful? Let me know your thoughts and opinions on this in the comment section down below. And along with this, if you would like to support the channel in other ways, please consider our Patreon. You can't always rely on YouTube itself, so this extra support will really help the channel stay strong and keep us getting that content out for you. But with that, thank you for spending just some of your time with me today, and I will see you next time on The Broken Sword.